Okay, so today we're going to be diving into something pretty major.
Mm-hmm.
It's humanity's relationship with God.
Okay.
Now, we're not here to like debate dogma or anything like that.
Right.
Think of it more as like a deep dive into that very human need for meaning,
Yeah.
for connecting with something bigger than ourselves.
It's a search as old as time itself, isn't it?
It really is.
That yearning to understand our place, in this vastness of the universe.
Right.
And if there's something greater,
Yeah.
some kind of purpose that's kind of weaving it all together.
It's easy to get caught up in the idea of religion being all about rules.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
But the source material we're looking at today frames it a little differently.
Okay.
It's more of a personal journey, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's less about, a rigid box and more like a framework for seeking that connection.
I like that.
Each faith might have its own path, its own way of going about it.
Right.
But that underlying desire to reach beyond ourselves, that's a common thread, I think.
And it's fascinating how different that reaching out can look.
Oh, absolutely.
Some people find a lot of solace in prayer, this very direct line to like a guiding God.
Yeah.
Others connect through nature,
Yeah.
almost like tapping into a more like universal energy.
Yeah, and the source material validates both.
Right.
It's really interesting.
It does.
Whether you envision like a personal God or a more abstract force, it's about finding what resonates with you.
Yes.
And to our listener,
yes,
wherever you fall on that spectrum, seeking, questioning, or, even somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Your exploration is valid.
I love it.
You're part of this conversation.
And what I think is really cool is that even within organized religion,
Yeah.
the how of that connection,
Right.
it's so individual.
It is very personal.
Yeah, you've got rituals, meditation, acts of service. It's not really about the specifics.
Right.
It's more about finding that personal resonance.
Finding what works for you. Exactly.
Yeah. So we've been talking about like religion and spirituality
Right.
as these like frameworks.
Yeah.
But what about how does this whole faith thing actually show up
Yeah. How does it play out?
in our lives?
Yeah. That's where it gets really interesting.
Right.
The source material points to faith as a real wellspring of strength.
Right. Okay.
Especially when you're facing challenges and things.
Interesting.
It's that deep down belief, that trust in something larger that can really fuel your resilience.
Yeah.
Even amidst chaos.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because it's not just like blind acceptance. It's like an active source of hope.
Right. Totally.
Like, yeah, life is going to throw curveballs. Well,
Yeah.
it's like having this underlying trust.
It's like an anchor, right?
It really is, yeah.
Yeah, and it can even act as a moral compass.
Oh, okay.
Not necessarily in a rigid rule-following sense,
Right.
but like a framework.
Oh,
navigating relationships, making decisions. Even finding a sense of inner peace.
Yeah. It all comes back to trust, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it does.
It's like that feeling of, okay, even if I don't know what's going on right now, there's a bigger picture unfolding.
Yeah. Yeah, and that can be incredibly grounding.
Right.
But, what's really important for our listener to remember is that faith isn't static.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's not about having it all figured out.
Yeah.
Doubt, questioning,
Yeah.
those are all part of the journey, too.
Totally.
Well,
It's like anyone can have faith when things are easy.
Exact.
But it's like when you're asking those tough questions
Yeah.
and you're like really wrestling with it,
Right.
that's where it becomes
That's where the growth is.
so powerful.
It's in the wrestling.
Yeah.
Now, this leads us to a question that I'm sure everyone has thought about at some point.
Okay.
Does God actively intervene in our lives?
Okay.
Or is it more of a hands-off approach?
All right, now we're getting to the good stuff. Because the source material actually presents both sides of this debate,
It does.
which I found so interesting.
Right. On the one hand, you have people that point to miracles,
Yes.
answered prayers, those moments where it seems like undeniable
Yeah.
proof of divine intervention,
Right.
and it's hard to deny the power of those experiences.
Those like pinch me moments.
Right.
Where it's like, okay, something bigger is definitely at work here.
Exactly.
But then there's this whole free will thing.
Right, which is like a cornerstone of many faiths.
Right.
The idea that we have the ability to make our own choices,
Right.
to learn and grow from our experiences. And if God is constantly stepping in,
Right.
does that undermine that free will?
It's such a fascinating paradox.
It is.
Because even when we acknowledge our own agency,
Yes.
many people still feel this sense of like divine guidance.
Of course.
Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
So how do we reconcile those two seemingly opposing ideas?
And that, I think, is where the source material really leaves it up to the listener.
Okay.
There's no right or wrong answer.
Right.
It's about you wrestling with that tension, with how divine influence and human choice might actually intertwine.
It's more about finding your own interpretation.
Exactly.
It is about finding the right answer.
Yes, and that's a really good point.
Which actually I think is a good segue into one of the most thought-provoking concepts from this whole thing.
Yeah.
So they touch on this idea that we're not just connected to something divine, but we might actually embody it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a mind-blowing concept when you really think about it.
It really is.
Yeah.
It makes you think about that whole created in God's image idea.
Right.
Not just as a metaphor, but as an actual reflection of divine qualities within us.
Okay.
Love, compassion, creativity, the best parts of what it means to be human.
It's those are little sparks of the divine in all of us.
Yeah. Exactly. And the source material doesn't shy away from the implications of that.
Oh, really?
It challenges us to consider okay, if we carry these divine qualities, how do we live a life that actually reflects that?
It's less about these grand displays of faith,
Right.
or more about how we actually show up every day.
Exactly. The small acts of kindness,
Right.
the empathy that we extend to others, even the way that we face our own struggles with honesty and courage.
Yeah.
All of that becomes a reflection of that inner light.
It's about striving to live in alignment with those values.
Yeah, it really is. And, for a lot of people, that's where that real connection happens.
Yeah.
Not just in the believing, but in the being.
Okay, but that brings up an interesting point.
Okay.
What about the not so great parts of ourselves?
Right.
The selfishness, the anger, the, moments where we don't embody those qualities. Does that negate the whole thing?
Well, I think that's where the real journey of faith kind of comes in.
Okay.
It's not about achieving this perfect state of divine reflection.
Right.
We're all a work in progress, right?
Of course. Yeah.
It's more about acknowledging those imperfections.
Okay.
Learning from our mistakes and, trying to do better next time.
So it's less about denying those parts of ourselves.
Yes.
And more about
trying to integrate them into how we understand faith.
Interesting.
Right.
So it's all part of it.
It's all part of it. And I think, the source material kind of hints at this. It's in those moments of struggle, the times when we fall short, where we often find ourselves, reaching out, seeking guidance, forgiveness, or maybe just a new way of looking at things.
It always goes back to that idea of faith being a journey.
It is.
Not like a destination.
Right.
We're always evolving. We're always learning.
Right. We're messing up.
Right.
We're growing.
And hopefully growing from it.
Exactly. And it's in that continual process of becoming
Yeah.
that I think we discover the most profound truths about ourselves, about, our place in all of this.
It's not about having all the answers.
No.
It's about being brave enough to ask the questions.
Yes.
To sit with the doubt.
To be okay with not knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be open to those moments of clarity that come along the way.
And to our listener, wherever you are on your own unique path, remember that there's no right or wrong answer here.
Right.
There's no finish line to cross.
Yeah.
It's about the journey itself.
It's about continually kind of looking at it and figuring out what it means to you.
Exactly. What it means to be human in this crazy universe.
In this vast universe that we're a part of.
Right.
I love that. And on that note, we will leave you to ponder those big questions.
There you go.
This deep dive may be over, but the conversation continues.
As always.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.